Hi guys, I'm Nicola McKenzie, founder and insurance specialist at Dunham McCarthy. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining to you how long you might want to consider running your life insurance policy for. So stay tuned. Now guys, before I get into the detail of today's video, it's worth me letting you know that this video is part of a whole series about life insurance. So make sure that you check out the other videos in the series to find out all that you need to know about your life insurance options. Now guys, how long you should be running your life insurance for is going to be very much a personal decision. One thing I would say is that it's going to be based on the reason why you are taking out the policy in the first place. What is your objective? What is your aim? What is it that you are trying to get from the policy if you're no longer here? Who is it you're trying to protect financially? And what is it that you're trying to protect financially will help you to dictate what the most appropriate term for your policy might be. So of course, what I'm talking about in this video is term life insurance. By term, I mean that you're taking out a set number of cover over a set number of years. So now what I'm going to do is break down and look at some common areas to think about tying the length of your insurance policy in with. So let's say that you're taking the policy out to cover a mortgage or any other debt for that matter, or at least any other debt that has an end date on it. If you're covering a mortgage, or if you're hoping that your life insurance policy is going to repay your mortgage in the event of your death, then it might be sensible to look at how much the mortgage debt is, and the amount of cover would likely reflect that, as would how long is your mortgage running for. So again, the mortgage term would usually reflect the policy term as well. Now let's say that instead of covering a mortgage debt, you're taking out a life insurance policy to protect your children financially. So if it's to protect your children financially, you need to have a think about how long your children need financial protection. And that would usually correlate with how long you intend for those children to be financially dependent on you. So every parent has their own ideas of how long their children are likely to be financially dependent on them. Common ages might be 18, 21, or 25, or even beyond that, you know, if you've got a child that may have additional needs, for example. But usually speaking, if the intention to take out the policy is to protect children that are dependent on you, then thinking about the age of which they're independent might help you to dictate what the most appropriate term is to run that life insurance policy up until. Now, another reference point to dictate the term of your life insurance policy might be your retirement age. So it might be that you've got not just children that are financially dependent on you, but also a spouse or a partner or other family member. In which case, your retirement age might be a useful thing to think about, and thinking about tying your life insurance policy in with retirement age. Because if your salary, you know, if you're in your working years, likely you're going to be earning your salary up until that age. So that might be a good reference point to tie the term of the policy up until, because if you were to pass away after your retirement, then it's likely that you'll be claiming a state pension or a private pension, in which case the impact of death whilst you're claiming a pension is going to be very different to the impact of death financially if you are still earning a salary. So therefore, retirement age can be an appropriate time to run a policy up until for many families. Here at Dunham McCarthy, we are a team of insurance specialists. Now, we help thousands of our clients to arrange the best life insurance to suit their circumstances. And we don't just deal with life insurance, we also help and give advice on critical illness cover and income protection. Now, we deal with lots of different insurance companies, from high street insurers to specialist insurers, to compare all of the options and find the best cover for you. And we also give you full advice and guidance through the process. And for every client that we arrange an insurance policy for, you also get access to our free will writing service over at mylastwill.co.uk. So head over to our website, dm.mortgage, and book in for a free insurance appointment today. And of course, if you are enjoying today's video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a future video upload. Now let's talk about funeral costs and inheritance tax. So a common area or a common reason that sometimes people take out life insurance is to cover the cost of a funeral or inheritance tax. Now, the difference with funeral costs and inheritance tax compared to the other reference points that I mentioned is that a funeral or an inheritance tax problem is something that usually is always going to exist. Whereas if you're trying to take out a life insurance policy for a mortgage or, to cover your children's financial dependency or your working life, then those things will have an end date. Your children will get to a point where they're eventually financially independent. Your mortgage will eventually be paid off. A funeral is different because a funeral is something that most of us will need indefinitely, always, whether we die next year or 50 years from now. Inheritance tax is the same. So if you have an inheritance tax problem today, it's likely that that inheritance tax problem, if anything, is going to increase over time as opposed to reduce. So in scenarios like that, even though sometimes people do consider having a term policy, so term meaning that they want to take out life cover for a set number of years, those types of policies may not be most appropriate to cover things like funeral costs and inheritance tax. Quite often, if that's solely the reason you're taking your policy out, it might be more appropriate to look at what's called a whole of life policy, which basically is a type of life insurance that runs indefinitely as long as you maintain your monthly premiums. Then it pays out on the date of death, as opposed to having a term policy that will have an end date on it. Because if you die outside the term of the policy, then you won't have the money that you intended to cover those funeral costs and to cover that inheritance tax bill. So whilst a term policy can sometimes still be appropriate to cover inheritance tax and funeral costs, depending on the situation, it's quite likely that those things are usually more appropriate being covered under a whole of life policy. Now guys, here are some other points to consider in relation to how long you might want to run your life insurance policy for. Now, generally speaking, the longer that you run a life insurance policy for, the more it's going to cost you per month. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you automatically want to keep the term as short as possible, because there are also going to be implications to you doing that. There are pros and cons with everything. So if you're looking at running your life insurance policy for a shorter period of time, like I said, that is going to cost you less. But you need to have a think about what's going to happen when the term of that policy runs out. Will you still need or want cover beyond that point? Because if so, you have to bear in mind that the older you are and the poorer health you might be, then that might mean that you're limited in terms of what your cover options are. You may not even be able to get cover if your health has deteriorated. And if you can get cover, naturally, if you're older, even if you're in the best health, it's usually going to cost you a lot more as an older person as when you were younger. So even though there are pros and cons to having a shorter life insurance policy term, same applies to having it run for longer. So if you're quite young, and let's say that you want to take out your life insurance policy, up until the age of 70, 80, or even 90, then yes, that is going to mean that you will not have the worry of having to review it when you're older and maybe in poorer health. However, you also have to have a think about, if you're looking at running a life insurance policy, let's say way beyond retirement years, are you going to have the financial stability to still pay that policy into your retirement years? And also, as I mentioned earlier, it is going to cost you more money the longer that you run your life insurance for, because the longer you're running it, the more risk that presents to the insurer. If you're running a life insurance policy up until the age of 90, an insurer has much higher risk of paying out than if you ran your life insurance policy until the age of 67, for example. So there's pros and cons to running a shorter life insurance policy compared to running a longer life insurance policy. And as I said, it's all down to your individual circumstances and the intention behind why you're taking the policy out, to help you to dictate or to weigh up what the most appropriate policy is. So guys, when you're thinking of taking out your life insurance, it's about weighing up the pros and cons and thinking about your individual circumstances. And I would always recommend that you get specialist advice when you're weighing the pros and cons up, because life insurance is one of the most important purchases that you will make in a lifetime potentially. In the event of you passing away, it's important that you have the right type of cover to help your family financially in what would be a very stressful time for them. So So it's not something that you want to cut corners with and make any mistakes with, and that's why you need to get specialist advice, and that's where we can help. So get in touch. We help thousands of clients to arrange life insurance policies, as well as critical illness and income protection as well. We deal with lots of insurance companies, from high street insurers to specialist insurers, to find the best policy for your circumstances. And we also provide a free will writing service for every client that we help to arrange a life insurance policy for via mylastwill.co.uk. Remember to check out the rest of the videos in the life insurance series as well. And remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any future uploads. And head over to the website to book in now for a free of charge video appointment so that we can help to weigh up your options and help you to arrange cover or review existing cover that you might have as well. But that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.